What an unbelievable night of fights last night. I am still flabbergasted by the fights last night. In terms of the main event, the co-main event, every fight was pretty awesome for the most part last night at UFC 266. Alexander Volkanovski, Brian Ortega, UFC featherweight title was on the line. Valentina Shevchenko, she put her title on the line against Lauren Murphy. And then you had a rematch that was 17 years in the making featuring Nick Diaz and ruthless Robbie Lawler. We had some awesome moments last night as well on the undercard. We had some awesome moments throughout the night. Throughout the entire night, there were awesome moments on the UFC 266 pay-per-view. I'm going to get to every moment that really took me by surprise, break down each and every fight that took place, why I feel like it went down the way that it did, and then give you who I feel should be next for the winner and loser of both fights, or of every fight, I should say. So, let's recap the action. Let's start off by saying that it was really awesome this weekend to see fellow fighters that I have watched since I was, in high school, middle school, be a part of inducting Kevin Randleman, the late, great Kevin Randleman, Royce Gracie inducting George St. Pierre into the UFC Hall of Fame was awesome. Okay, it was amazing. It was like a passing of the torch as far as like, now you are as revered as I am moment inside the sport of mixed martial arts. And recapping the UFC Hall of Fame ceremony, for me, it's a new Hall of Fame. It's a new sport. The sport's only been around, 25 years, almost 30 years now. And you have these figures inside the sport of mixed martial arts that are prominent, but we have a lot of new fans in this sport. We have a lot of new fans in this sport. We have a lot of new competitors in this sport. We have passing and a changing of the guard that's taking place constantly as this sport is ever evolving. And to see the pageantry that this sport is now regarded in after a long, arduous journey of trying and working like hell to make this sport great and put this sport in the mainstream, and then to have the fallout of Jon Jones, who was also inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame for his part in his bout with Alexander Gustafsson, I believe, only to have this fallout of a new arrest out of nowhere. Once again, I mean, can we be shocked? Are we shocked that we're not shocked that it happened. We're not shocked that Jon Jones found himself in a bad spot. He's continued to do that over the course of his long career. But we are shocked that the UFC, more so, me speaking here, I'll speak for myself in saying this, I'm more shocked that the UFC continues to give this guy chance after chance after chance after chance. The most talented fighter that we've ever seen inside the sport of mixed martial arts in terms of his skill set, the dominance that he's exhibited over the course of his career. But enough is enough. Now you are featuring a fighter that, he's accomplished quite a lot in the sport, but now you're featuring a fighter as a part of your brand continuously, knowing that he is not a good person. I think that's a safe, fair, honest assessment. And it really put a bad taste in my mouth after I was excited and happy and thrilled that George St. Pierre and Jon Jones, as well as Mark Coleman bringing in the late great Kevin Randleman into the UFC Hall of Fame. These beautiful moments in the sport are then hurt by Jon Jones and his continuous screw-ups and his continuous lack of really caring about the promotion or the position that he's in, clearly. And more so than anything, not really caring about how he represents himself and his family, who are also prominent athletes. His brother Chandler, in particular, of the Arizona Cardinals, he had 5 sacks week 1, and he's a great defensive end in the NFL and everything like that. So this is the Jon Jones Fallout again. Another fallout again. I had to change the headline. Jon Jones Fallout. No, Jon Jones Fallout again. This is another reoccurring, consistent behavior, or bad behavior, of course, I should say, from Jon Jones. And we don't know all the details yet. But do we need to know the details to understand that this is the umpteenth time that Jon Jones has found himself in this position? Do we need to know the details of it? No. It's actually none of our business. The public will, it'll be released to the public, I'm sure, based on who he is. But we don't exactly need to know. All we know is that it's another arrest for Jon Jones. It makes the sport of MMA look bad. And it's ridiculous that the UFC continues to give this guy chance after chance after chance. I wanted to acknowledge that at the start of the show today because I know people are going to ask me about it. I'm going to touch on it here, right now, and say that it's utterly ridiculous that the UFC continues to give this guy chances when he is not worthy of these chances. You have to earn these chances. He's just earning it based on the fact that they want the pay-per-view buys. They understand how talented he is. They understand that he's a great fighter. Of course, he is all of those things and then some. I just said it. He's the most talented fighter in MMA history, but he's probably the biggest screw-up in professional sports as it stands right now. Has he killed anyone? No. Has he hurt people? Yes. Has he put himself and others in harm's way based on his horrible decisions? Yes. Daniel Cormier once said he looked into the eyes of Jon Jones' PR woman and he understood that she was losing. She was fighting a losing battle, trying to represent him and trying to put a positive tone on Jon Jones. And, that was for the sake of the rivalry and everything of that nature. But now, all these years later, Daniel Cormier, Rashad Evans, these guys were right. This guy just continues to put himself in bad positions. And it's really unfortunate. So with that being said, giving you my take on the Jon Jones situation, we don't know all the details yet, but what I do know is it's an embarrassment for the sport. It's pathetic. It's a joke. And it's pathetic and embarrassing that the UFC continues to give this guy chances. And he's really not even an active fighter anymore. He's trying to move up to heavyweight, trying to salvage his career there. Does anyone really care if he fights after this? I don't. I haven't cared if he fought in a long time because it's just the same song and dance with Jon Jones. And I'm just sick of it. So that's my thoughts on it. So UFC 266 post-fight reaction. We'll start off with Andrade versus Calvillo. Now, I knew going into this one that Andrade was going to get a knockout. I predicted it. I called it right. I was actually right. 4 out of 5 main card fights on this fight card outside of the main event, which we'll get to, of course. But Andrade, far too big, far too strong for Cynthia Calvillo. And honestly, I felt like that was a bad matchmaking moment by the UFC. It made sense in terms of Calvillo being ranked, a top 5 fighter in the division. Andrade, former title contender, former champion in the weight class. But what's next for her? I feel like she's going to fight someone within the crosshairs of the top 5 once again. And Cynthia Calvillo will find herself bumped down to the mid-tier level of the bottom 10 fighters within the division. Great knockout for Andrade to get back in the win column. Curtis Blades and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. This fight was not the most entertaining. If you're a new mixed martial arts fan and you come from the boxing circles, I even heard people sitting around me saying, oh, man, no one wants to watch these two guys just lay on top of each other. If you don't want to watch wrestling, if you don't want to watch grappling, if you don't want to watch jiu-jitsu, watch boxing. That's my best piece of advice for you because those facets of fighting will always be a prominent facet in fighting within the sport of mixed martial arts. They'll always be prominent as far as being featured within mixed martial arts fights. It's a mixed martial arts fight. It's not a boxing match. You'll see jiu-jitsu, you'll see wrestling, you'll see all sorts of disciplines in one fight. And Muay Thai, everything. And, I think Curtis Blaydes did what he needed to do to get the win. And coming off of a loss to Derek Lewis, the form and fashion that was in, he did what he needed to do to get the win. And Jairzinho Rozenstruik is tough as nails. So really, although Rozenstruik lost, I should say, this isn't really much of a downswing for him. I think he's going to get another opportunity against the top, 10 guy. He's definitely still a top 10 heavyweight. And it's something that I think, won't really hurt his stock too bad. Won't really hurt him in the ways that people think. But I thought that this was a really cool opportunity for both guys to get their shot at, getting back into that top 3 conversation. Frankly, as far as what I would want for Blaydes is to get the opportunity to fight Stipe Miocic. I think that makes a ton of sense. I'd love to see Stipe get in there with Blaydes. Stipe might be getting in there with Jon Jones, maybe not. But Blaydes said, I want Jon, I want Miocic, or the winner of Ngannou and Gane. I don't think the winner of Ngannou Gane is likely because Blaydes has lost to Ngannou twice. So I don't think that's going to happen. All right. So that's the first 2 fights. The rematch. Okay, the rematch that I've been waiting for 17 years. Remember being at my, I believe it was at my dad's house. My parents divorced when I was young. So being at my dad's house, and we were watching the fights. It was Tito and Chuck that night, and Ruthless Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz fought. Lawler got knocked out. 17 years later, here we are. Both guys cemented themselves as legends. Both Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler, right, have cemented themselves as legends prior to this fight. This was a legends fight. Legends in the sense that these guys, for what they've done in the sport, they're still willing, ready, willing, and able, I should say, to compete, right? They're still ready, willing, and able to compete. And I wondered going into this one, how well of a state would Nick Diaz be in, given that he took 6 years off from the sport, right? You don't get better by not doing something. Being off for 6 years, that's a damn long time, right? So Robbie Lawler, he's been active for these 6 years. He won a championship in the process of Diaz being inactive and defended it and had a lot of really great fights, fought a who's who, whereas Nick Diaz has been on the sidelines. So this fight was so intriguing. And when the fight starts out, Nick Diaz throws the spinning kick. It was a slow kick, I'll say that. I think, here we go. Nick Diaz looked very slow early on in the action, and then something clicked. I think Nick Diaz is much slower than what he once was. As well, he hasn't fought in a long time. So the timing wasn't really there. The speed was definitely not there. The fact that this fight was contested at 185 pounds, there were moments where Nick Diaz looked a little bit, I don't want to say out of shape, but he looked in shape, but he didn't look like Nick Diaz of old. He truly did not. You watch his bout with Anderson Silva, you watch his bout with George St. Pierre, you see a guy that is just fluid and a guy that is moving his head real well. The first round, I thought Nick Diaz looked a little slow, but then he really did start to pick it up a little bit, and he was maintaining the distance that he loves to maintain, firing a volume of shots that aren't necessarily hard shots, but a volume of shots, a pacing that he really paced himself well throughout the fight as the fight continued. But he did take a couple shots, more than a couple, quite a few shots from Lawler, as Lawler just continuously pushed forward. Diaz was really on the back foot the whole fight, whereas Lawler was pushing the action, pressing the action. In points of the fight, I noticed that Lawler was swollen. He had the bumps and bruises. I'm thinking, these shots are not going to knock Lawler out, but they're starting to hurt, and there's a difference. It's an accumulative pain that Lawler was starting to feel, and Lawler was then pushing the pace and saying, well, I'm going to put some mustard on my shots to end this fight. And that's simply what I saw. I saw Lawler really weather a little bit of an accumulative storm from Nick Diaz. The speed advantage was to Lawler, but not by much. I'll tell you that. Not by much. Both of these guys are a lot slower than what they once were. And I saw it really clearly out of the gate from both guys. But it was a very odd finish. I still don't know how that fight ended or why it ended. Was it because of the punch to the nose? Was it because Nick Diaz it looked like he had a little bit of a lump on his shin? I don't know what happened there, but Lawler was able to drop Diaz, not out, but drop him, put him on his butt, and then Diaz said no mas, which it's a great win for Robbie Lawler to get this one back after all these years, after everything that Lawler's been through in his career, winning, defending, and losing the title in the form and fashion that he did against Tyron Woodley, really essentially a one punch. And then coming back, putting on entertaining performances, losing 4 straight, the longest skid in his career. But to get this one back after 17 years and to get it back the form and fashion that he did, this is a big win for Robbie Lawler. It really is, for the sake of his career and his name, everything. This was great. Wouldn't have exactly hurt him had he lost this fight, but it was great that he got the W. Simply put, it was great that he got the W. And there's the question, will Nick Diaz be back? And, what is my honest takeaway from the fact that Nick Diaz looked the way he did last night in moments of the fight? He looked great, and in other moments of the fight, he looked very, very slow. And my take on it is this: 6 years is just too goddamn long. 6 years is way too long. And I'm talking from my level of competitive, I guess you could say, combat in wrestling. I graduated high school in 2010. I didn't hit a wrestling mat for another 5 or 6 years after that. And I had no business for like the first hour being in that wrestling gym. None whatsoever. I was getting thrown around. I was getting out-muscled. I was getting pulled, yanked, twisted, turned, every which way. And then all of a sudden, it was like my muscle memory really started to get in the flow of things to where I wasn't really thinking. I was just doing. And that's what I saw last night from Nick Diaz. I saw a guy that took too much time off for reasons that most of which weren't his fault. I will throw that out there. But he took too much time off, and he was slowly getting his feet wet. He's like putting his feet in the pool, and then he just sort of dove in and swam to the other side. That's kind of what I saw from Nick Diaz last night. And, it was fun. God dang it, it was fun watching Nick Diaz get back into the cage. And it was fun to see him get back into the cage against a guy like Robbie Lawler. It was fun for me to see Lawler fight a guy like Diaz. It was fun. It was great. The fight itself delivered in every which way, despite the fact that both these guys might be a little bit past their prime. This fight delivered. Will Nick Diaz be back? He says he'll be back. Should he come back? Did he take too much time off? I don't know if he should come back, and I do believe he took too much time off. Really, at this point, what do you have to gain? You lost to Lawler. Obviously, that was a fight to get you back in the thick of things, but 38 years old, the better days are behind him. The prime was missed. And that's what's unfortunate about Nick Diaz. It wasn't that he is past his prime. The prime was completely missed out on. He was 31, 32 when he stepped out of the sport. Those are your prime years, 33, 34, 35. Those years in particular, those are your prime. 36 is kind of the end of it. 37, yeah. But 38, come back at 38 after 6 years off. And honestly, I say all this, right? I say all this. Nick Diaz fought very well, despite the fact that he was TKO'd, despite the fact that, I mentioned how he looked slow. There were moments in the fight where he looked fantastic, where his head was moving, where he was firing those volume shots, where he was landing the 1-2, sticking and moving. It was a sight to see. The fight was fun. For my fandom's sake, I do want to see Nick Diaz fight again. But I put my podcaster's hat on and analyzing how Diaz looked in there and analyzing and knowing what he did for the sport, I don't really think it doesn't have to happen. If it does, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Valentina the Bullet, Shevchenko defended her title once again against Lauren Murphy last night, and honestly, I can't find myself spending too much time on this fight because it went exactly how I thought it would. I got the Lawler fight right. I picked that one right. Shevchenko, I thought she was going to just mow right through Lauren Murphy. With all due respect to Lauren Murphy, Valentina Shevchenko is just simply the better fighter in every aspect of the sport. Striking, wrestling, Muay Thai, takedown defense. Did Lauren Murphy have her moments? Yes and no. She landed a punch or two. She landed a kick or two. But really what irked me about this fight, in all honesty, and I have a hot take on this fight, what irked me about Shevchenko versus Murphy is the fact that Lauren Murphy's corner basically told her after 2 rounds she was doing a great job. Doing a great job in there. Keep doing what you're doing. She wasn't doing a great job, though. She was losing, and she was losing quite badly. So when you hear, the corner react to what they see within these fights, and you hear these corners say, "Oh, you're doing a great job," and they're not, it sets a bad mentality or a false mentality in the fighter moving forward. She was thinking she was doing well, and she was not. She was losing. She was getting dominated. So shame on Lauren Murphy's corner, to be honest, for saying that, because it was not true. She was not doing well. You want to give her positive reinforcement, but you got to be a realist in there too, especially when she's getting hit and kicked and punched. She's getting hurt. She's getting hurt in there in first 2 rounds. Was her goal in this fight, was her game plan in this fight to just last the 25 minutes? And was that why she was doing well? I didn't understand that. It irked me. It annoyed me. And, I think the UFC really has to look at this division and say, we got to get a clear-cut challenger for her. Maybe if it comes from another organization, whoever it may be, we got to get somebody that is new, fresh, and someone that is exciting and will talk a good game. These last few opponents for Shevchenko are just not realistic challenges. That doesn't take anything away from Shevchenko. I think you put her in there against anyone and it won't make a difference. That's the point. She's cleaned out the division. There's no one for her to fight. And anyone that they put in there with her, she just makes them look like they're not even worthy of her time. And that's, with all due respect, I want to see third fight between Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko. I think it's a fight that has to happen. Maybe once Nunes gets past Juliana Pena. If she does, we'll see that happen. And then, of course, the main event of the evening, Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian T-City Ortega. One of the craziest fights I've ever seen. One of the fights that I feel should be held in the regard as a fight of the year contender, right? Fight of the year possibility. Based on what we saw last night, this was a full-on mixed martial arts battle of attrition. We saw every discipline. We saw every moment sway both sides. Volkanovski's on the edge of winning. Ortega's on the edge of winning. Momentum changes left and right. I mean, this was a great, great fight. And if you didn't respect the champ, Alexander Volkanovski, en route to winning this fight, the form and fashion that he did via unanimous decision, you should respect him now. You should have more respect for him now. I know that, there's a lot of diehard Max Holloway fans out there that feel that, Volkanovski did not beat Max Holloway once or twice. I'm one of them. I'm one of those fans. Definitely feel he didn't win the second fight. First fight, okay, whatever. But second fight, I feel like he definitely didn't win that one. So I do have to have and tip my cap to him now. I have to say, wow, that was great. He fought a very smart fight. He dominated And there were moments where Ortega had moments, of course. We'll get to those, but get a lot of respect for Volkanovski after that performance. Brian T. City Ortega, you start to see a well-versed skill set from him, really in the third round. The first 2 rounds, I thought Ortega fought with a very weird game plan. I thought Ortega fought with a weird game plan in terms of not initiating the takedown, not initiating even the clinch to get him to the ground while they're both dry. By the time Ortega implemented this submission game that he possesses in great fashion, in spades in comparison to Volkanovski, it was too late. Moment in the fight where obviously Ortega has Volkanovski in a choke. He's on top of him, but he's choking Volkanovski. His head's stuck. Volkanovski's head is stuck. I thought, man, this could be it. This could be the moment where Ortega takes the title. The choke was tight. Volkanovski's head was purple. Volkanovski said after the fight that the choke was tight. He just got out of it. Plus, I think Ortega was a little too tired to hold the choke a little bit longer. If he would have let that go for maybe another 10 seconds, I think Volkanovski would have went out. I really do. But you never know. It's just my analysis on it. But Ortega is one of those few fighters that is just a special kind of tough. These fights that he's fought in, these 2 losses to Holloway and Volkanovski, these are fights that have taken, I think will take years off of his life in terms of the damage that he has taken in those 2 fights. Obviously, I'm not being serious. I'm being somewhat serious in saying that, but don't want to disrespect him because Brian Ortega is one of the toughest SOBs that I've ever seen fight in the UFC. After last night, both of these gentlemen, as far as their stock, it skyrocketed. It skyrocketed after last night, and I truly feel that we will see these 2 fight again. It's a matter of when, not if. Out of the waters have to be somewhat, cleaned up in terms of this fight and whether we see it happen again. Volkanovski probably has to take on Max Holloway again. Ortega might take some time off. I would hope he would, based on the damage that he suffered in this fight with Volkanovski. It was a lot. It was definitely a lot. But we'll see what happens. I truly feel that it was a great fight. Volkanovski rose his stock. What's next for him? I think the winner of Holloway and Yair Rodriguez should be next. And then Ortega, we'll see what happens for him once he takes, once he makes that comeback from, his time off. I think he's going to need it because there was a lot of damage accrued in that fight. But nonetheless, it was a fantastic performance. UFC 266, classic main event between Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thanks so much for tuning in to the UFC 266 post-fight reaction show. Take care.